Yesterday was Veterans Day, and my dad served in Korea. My father-in-law served in Korea. You've had relatives serve in war, and I know you have, and you've had relatives that have served, friends who have served. Maybe they didn't go to war, but they were still serving. And yet, what we don't know, and what we haven't really focused on until the last few years, are the mental health challenges. We focused a lot on the physical challenges, but not the mental health challenges. So I wanted to reach out to Maja Kazazic because she's a mental health advocate and she works directly with veterans. And hey, Maja, thanks for joining us this afternoon on 97.1 FM Talk.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Hey, before we jump into this issue of veteran mental health issues, I wanted to place this in context because of your involvement. You are personally a bombing survivor from the Bosnian War, aren't you?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm originally from Bosnia, and if you remember back in the early 90s, there was the genocide going on in Bosnia, and my family and I, along with 60,000 other civilians, were stuck between two armies with no food, no water, no electricity, no medicine, and no outside contact. So one of the days I was hanging out with five of my friends. I was 16 years old at the time, and we were hanging in the courtyard of a building when the RPG exploded, killing all five of my friends instantly, and I was severely injured. So from that point on, I had my leg amputated with anesthesia. I had over 100 surgeries. I had to relearn how to walk again.
Goodness.
And worst of all, I was hit with a horrible, horrible case of PTSD.
So how does your experience help you when you speak to or you advocate on behalf of veterans who are dealing with mental issues and challenges related to their military service? How does your experience play into your ability to help them?
Well, it's the number one thing with veterans in particular is when they come back from service, they come back to regular civilians, and it's very difficult for them to feel understood. It's very difficult for a regular civilian to even actually understand what happens during the war. So different types of trauma. It does not mean that we're not minimizing anything that's happening to civilians. However, it's very different. And one thing that is really helpful when it comes to supporting those kind of people is the empathy. Having someone who do understand what you've gone through, having someone who can actually tell you, you know what, I've been through it, I understand it, and trust me, you can get through it as well.
We're talking to mental health advocate Maja Kazazic, and what type of mental health issues do our military professionals encounter? I mean, you've mentioned that when they have to transition from military service to civilian life, but what kind of mental health issues have you seen that they experience?
Well, there is, the number one thing is going to be post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, trauma from what might have happened in combat or during their service. That will lead into panic attacks, anxiety attacks, depression, and unfortunately, suicide. We have seen the suicide rates skyrocket for the vets when they come back. In fact, since 2010, more than 65,000 veterans have died by suicide, which is more than the total number of deaths. That's more than total numbers of deaths combined of combat during Vietnam War, Iraq, and Afghanistan, all three combined. So that is a huge, huge number. Suicide is something that they're fighting every day. And number one thing that we can do for these people is tell them, we understand, ask for help, we're here to support you.
And that suicide rate among veterans, that's far higher on a percentage basis than what you would see in the general public.
Yes, so in a general public, what we're seeing is 18 per 100,000 people. And for veterans, we're seeing 31.6 per 100,000 people.
Wow. So it's about double.
Not quite, but almost double. Yeah, but almost double what we were seeing in the general population. And, I always say it's really they're fighting a silent war when they come back. They've just gone out there and done their duty and protected us and our freedom. And now then they come back. Now they're fighting their own internal war. And there's many, many veterans that are dying from it.
Well, one of the things that I grew up in a family, my father had just gotten out of the service, and I've had certainly lots of relatives and uncles and other folks, friends who had been in the military. And how does the military culture and attitudes of military personnel, how does that sometimes deter people from coming forward to seek help for their mental health issues?
Well, we all know that with military, there's that tough guy image, or tough gal image that we associate with, and they also go through rigorous trainings to prepare for this type of stuff. So that all this stuff puts in you, I'm going to be tough, I'm going to be strong, and I'm going to power through no matter what happens. And in some sense, that's actually very helpful and necessary for combat overseas. When you're in a situation of war and you're fighting, you know what? You got to suck it up and you got to get through it. So you do this for years, and then you come home, and now it's very hard to shift gears and say, "Ooh, let me be weak for a moment. I'm going to have someone help me." That's a very hard switch, and that's, to me, is how military life will actually affect what happens mentally and emotionally with veterans.
We're talking to mental health advocate Maja Kazazic, and if a military service person is out of the service, are there resources available for him or her to seek out mental health treatment?
Absolutely. There are resources out there available. There's, for depression, anxiety, and of course there's suicide helplines. The problem is that these are really already services that are overburdened in general. So there has been a lot of talk, and Biden administration has actually put in place some new strategies to help alleviate some of these pressures to make sure that our vets do get a service as soon as possible.
One of the things that I've seen you work with, because I've seen you do a lot of presentations, and you are a corporate speaker and a motivational speaker, and you utilize a dog in your presentations, and I love that. I'm a lifelong dog lover. And how important are therapy dogs in the treatment of military-related mental health issues?
Well, just as you said that, I got goosebumps, especially because my service dog, a beautiful Great Dane Rosie, is literally sitting next to me here. And Rosie is my service dog. She has been tremendous help and made a huge difference for me fighting my PTSD, fighting my anxiety. In my case particular, what she does is she will detect panic attack, anxiety attacks prior to them happening. As soon as there's an elevated heart rate or elevated blood pressure, she will come in, let me know, and I can do preemptive measures to stop this panic attacks, anxiety before it happens. In addition to that, I suffer with a lot of night terrors and nightmares and flashbacks, and they usually happen in the middle of the night. So when that happens, when I wake up, I cannot tell what's real, what's not. And she was the one that's going to come into my room, wake me up, and kind of bring me back to reality. So in my case personally, it has made an enormous difference, but I can tell you that no matter what person you are, if you have an animal helping you, it's going to be really, really positive experience.
Yeah, this is such an important issue to me personally. Not that I have a personal connection to it, but I so admire veterans. I so admire folks who have put their service and put their lives on the line to protect the cause of freedom. And yet when they're injured physically or emotionally, so many times we as Americans have not said thank you in terms of taking care of them. If they've been injured serving me, I feel like we have a responsibility to serve them. And if someone right now is listening and thinking about suicide, what would you tell them?
Well, first of all, let me just echo what you've just said, and I absolutely agree, is that these men and women are going out there serving us, serving our country, absolutely selflessly putting their lives on line for really a thankless cause. And when they come back, we do need to make sure that we treat them with respect and give them everything they need to come back and reintegrate back into regular society. But if somebody right now is suffering, the first thing I would do, call 911 or suicide helpline. If you're considering it, please call. There is help out there. I know that the situation could be dire. I have been there myself, contemplated suicide because
yes,
it is very difficult at certain times. You go down that rabbit hole and you just don't know. It feels very hopeless. But believe me, if I can do it, you can do it. I have gone through a lot, and I guarantee you that find that little sliver of hope, hang on to it, and reach out for help. There are people out there that love you, they need you. There's a reason why you're here. You just have to find it.
We're talking to mental health advocate Maja Kazazic, and in addition to your work as a mental health advocate, and I've followed you for a while, you are also an in-demand corporate speaker and a motivational speaker and a coach. Where can people find out about what you do for folks?
The best way to find out about me is on my website, www.maja.kazazic.com. That's the best place to go to reach out to me if anyone needs any help. I mean, I'm always here to try to help anyone. I definitely do a lot of speaking, a lot of corporate speaking, especially now. We talk a lot about resilience, stress, overcoming obstacles, people going back after the pandemic and reintegrating into normal world. Corporations are having a really hard time, especially because there was a new study in Denmark that came out. There was, I think, 15 years longitudinal study that showed that people that have mental health illnesses can bring those into a work environment and technically kind of spread them around. So employers are definitely trying to figure out ways to combat this mental health issue and, preemptively strike before it becomes anything bigger.
But your approach to overcoming obstacles for folks who have mental health challenges, whether they are veterans or non-veterans, that approach of overcoming challenges in our lives, that's even applicable to folks who may not even have mental health challenges or just trying to get through the challenges of their own lives, even if those aren't mental health challenges.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, let's face it, life itself is a challenge.
Yes, it is.
If you haven't, been challenged, you haven't lived. I mean, that's really the case. And I work a lot with people. I myself am also a life coach, and I provide as much personal growth and help as I can to certain individuals because we're all facing look at this pandemic. I mean, it has affected everyone, and people are struggling to come back into real life. And my personal opinion is that as the COVID is now going away and we're coming back to normal life, that we're going to end up with a lot of people who are going to suffer with PTSD or symptoms of PTSD as a result of trying to integrate into the new life and life after pandemic. What happened to us for the last 2 years, this constant fear for life. Am I going to get COVID? Am I not? Should I get vaccinated? Should I not? Who do I believe? What do I believe? I mean, it's been a lot of pressure. Add to that a political situation and circumstances that has been in this country for several years now that has really polarized the country, us against them, are really all major stress creators for anxiety, depression, and, even PTSD.
Fabulous. Hey, Maja Kazazic, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon on 97.1 FM Talk.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to talk to you.